Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar here with HYCU on building matter resilience with 360-degree legal data protection. My name's Andy Fernandez, and I'm joined by Ashish Rao on the HYCU product team. We have a couple folks just joining us, so we're going to give it at least one more minute for everybody to get settled. Use this time to get some water, sit down, and relax. A couple housekeeping items. Any questions that you have, please use the Q&A button, not the chat button, and we'll be able to answer them live, or Ashish or myself will be able to answer them throughout this presentation as well. If we do get a ton of questions and we don't have enough time, we'll make sure to email you a response to that question. This session is also going to be recorded. You will have access to the presentation itself as well. So hopefully over the next 20 minutes, everyone who's now joining us will see a pretty insightful conversation, not just on protecting a specific application, but on matter resilience for these law firms as well. So a few more seconds for everybody to get settled in, and then we'll get started. All right, perfect. Let's kick it off. So for those joining us today, for the next 20 minutes, we're going to have a very interesting discussion, not necessarily just about the technology, but when you think about a law firm or a legal department, what are all the applications? What are all the critical data the organization uses? And how do you make sure that all of it is resilient? So myself, Andy Fernandez, and Ashish Rao, we're going to cover this topic with you in detail. For those of you joining, you probably know a little bit about HYCU, but just from a background perspective, our focus, our mission is to build a safer world through the protection of its data. We're globally recognized and trusted. We have over 4,800 organizations all over the world with very strategic alliances with organizations across infrastructure, cloud, and of course, even organizations like iManage themselves. And of course, we have key investors across the board, but at the end of the day, we are trusted by thousands of organizations to protect the crown jewels of their environment. Now, one thing that we're very, very proud of is today's day and age, the majority of systems of record that you're leveraging are access as a service. They are no longer self-hosted. They are business applications that you're using, whether it's iManage Cloud, whether it's Salesforce, whether it's Microsoft 365. These are all as a service applications. And we saw this trend a few years ago. We worked very hard to make sure to protect these SaaS and cloud applications. And we were named a leader by IDC, the de facto leader in SaaS data protection. We're also recognized by organizations like GigaOM and Gartner as a leader and a visionary in the world of data protection. It's something that we take very seriously and we're very, very proud of. But to the matter at hand, I think the hype cycle of news and around AI is introducing pretty monumental announcements and new technologies every single day. So it's kind of hard to sometimes take a step back and really understand where we are. But if you think about any organization, but especially a law firm, it's a distributed digital matter engine. What do we mean by that? Well, I remember explicitly years ago having conversations with law firms and legal departments. There was no use of cloud infrastructure. Everything was mostly data center deployments. Ashish is nodding along because he's had those same conversations. But if we look at where the efficiency gains are today with AI, organizations are adopting these solutions that give them AI workflows. It is now fully embedded in these legal workflows. But in order to leverage those AI solutions, you have to use these as a service, which means you're migrating from a data center to a public cloud service or a SaaS application because you have to embrace these technologies. The point is, with these great technologies and these great capabilities come pretty tremendous responsibility as well around your security posture. And it's kind of a wild world where you go from protecting a data center and all of the applications that are living in that data center, and it's a monolith, and you're able to protect the VMs, you're able to protect your file shares, you are fully protected, and you usually have one or two trusted data protection vendors that you leverage. But all of a sudden, all of this critical data is sitting in different SaaS applications, sitting in different vendor hosted environments. And it's very, very important that the solutions that you choose are secure, are responsible, and are giving you the data protection options that your organization needs. And it's also not just about a specific application like an iManage. It's about whether it's a case file, whether it's information on a client, regardless of what it is in your organization, that matter data is distributed across so many systems. Ashish, from your perspective, you're speaking, because of your product responsibilities at HYCU, you're speaking to law firms all the time. Does this resonate? Like, what's been your experience as far as what the modern law firm is going through today?
No, of course, I think what we're seeing on the screen, some of these key points in terms of how the industry is sort of shaping. And actually, I'd like to double click a little bit on the first thing, which is on the AI side of things, right? It's very interesting in the legal sector that they were pretty slow in terms of migrating from or moving from on-prem to the cloud and SaaS. But if you look at the movement and the momentum on the AI side of things, they're actually way ahead than so many different industries. So it's really interesting to see that how AI is playing a very, very important role in the legal industries for law firms, for researching, drafting, and so many different things, right? Classification of documents. There's so many different use cases, and even agentic workflows that law firms are implementing today. So AI is a massive thing that's been happening over the last couple of years, and the momentum is still going on. And of course, yeah, what I definitely see in all of my conversations is it's not one single system that manages everything, right? Today, especially because we have, law firms have moved to so many different point solutions to manage and specialize in that particular area. Could be practice management, could be document management, identity, so many different things, right? It's an entire ecosystem that's growing. And definitely the whole matter, as we look at it, uh, is fragmented, is distributed, and they work in tandem. Of course, it's very important. There's a workflow, there's communication, but that data is fragmented, and I definitely see that in all my conversations that I have.
No, that's a very interesting point, Ashish. And when you think about even breaking down when you're talking about where that data actually lives, give me give me an understanding of what that means, right? Give me an understanding of what a law firm means and what do these distributed data assets look like.
Yeah. So as I was saying, this of course doesn't completely capture the picture, but I think we try to capture as much as we can. But it's spread across, and the whole workflow is spread across, right from starting your matter, which could be on a practice management, system where you sort of enter that, you get the basics there, then sort of storing the documents on, let's say, something like an iManage or any other document management solution. And collaboration, of course, plays a very big role because, of course, you do store your documents in one place, but you also need to communicate with clients, communicate internally, communicate with external, contributors, and all that happens through Outlook, through Teams. You're sort of collaborating on documents with like Word and Excel and those kind of things, right? So a lot of data and a lot of the operations is reliant on these kind of solutions. There's cloud storage, which a lot of law firms also leverage today to maybe store archive data or to maybe store a lot of the knowledge data, which they don't frequently access. File shares, again, as we were discussing, there is the movement from the on-prem world to cloud and SaaS. But one thing I've definitely seen across all the conversations I've had is law firms still stick to a lot of on-prem infrastructure, right? A lot of data is still kept on-prem because it gives them higher degree of control, higher degree of sort of security around it. So file shares today is still used to store a lot of data as well. And of course, AI, Harvey, Lexis Plus, there are many these different solutions, right? So, and of course, all of this is being safeguarded with identity. We've seen at least in most of conversations I've had, enter ID really comes up at the top of it in terms of how they're safeguarding the access itself, because that's again super critical in the legal industry, right? And yeah, I think it's really spread across. I mean, of course, as I said, this is not the entire representation, but it gives us a understanding of how fragmented and what the entire workflow for a matter looks like, and how law firms need to start thinking of protecting these different workloads today because matter data is scattered across all of these different workloads.
No, that makes total sense, Ashish, and it's a good perspective to hear. And to that point at the beginning, right, when we talked about everything that you see here 12 years ago was in a data center. Everything. Well, except obviously the AI component, right? I think we called it big data back then. But the point is that back then everything was in virtual machines. And you were able to take snapshots, you were able to back them up, keep them off site, do what you need to do. You had DR, you had HA, you had everything that you had to do. It was fully in your control, but also fully in your responsibility. All of a sudden, to be able to subscribe to these services versus host these services means that you have a very different relationship with your data and a very different relationship with how you're able to protect that data, right? So across all of these cloud and SaaS services, the shared responsibility model exists. And for a lot of people, they're very aware of the shared responsibility model within Microsoft 365. Everyone's pretty much aware that they have to back up Microsoft 365, that it's not Microsoft's responsibility. That same model, that same legal language applies to every single as a service application that your law firm uses. And I would always explain it like a parking garage, right, Ashish? I come in, I go to the garage. What do I expect? I expect the garage to be safe. I expect it to be open. I expect it to be well lit. I expect that when I pay, I can get in, I can leave my car. And when I come back, I still have a car. If I leave my windows open, if somebody scratches my car, if somebody hits my car, none of that responsibility sits with the garage. They don't take liability for it. It is going to sit with me as the owner of the car. And so we have to think about our data that way, no matter where it lives. It's still something that we all own within our organizations. But if you think about 12 years ago, when everything was in a data center, what were our concerns? What were our concerns around resilience? Well, is there a ransomware attack potentially? Are we susceptible to a ransomware attack? Are we susceptible to human error? And then are we susceptible to the old school DR incident, which was natural disasters and actual power outages? Today, Ashish, when you think about digital matter, when you think about it living in all of these heterogeneous environments, what are some of the threats that really come to mind for some of the CIOs and organizations you're speaking to?
Yeah, so I think again, human error, I think, has consistently been, the number one threat or the risk that law firms have, because accidental deletions, some sort of misconfigurations, overrides, because of course there are so many people working on a single document at a particular point in time. There could be accidental overrides or those kind of things, right? So human error still exists. It still sort of is one of the top concerns that law firms have. And I've seen so many cases in my conversations with customers and partners where they have to sort of struggle and go back and find these deleted documents from the system, right? It happens very often, and I think it's a very very often that these IT tickets are raised for these kind of incidents. And one of the other things that I'm seeing, one of the concerns, we may not have too many instances of this happening, but one of the concerns that I'm seeing across law firms is the AI sort of things, right? And there are two sides to it. One is they want to ensure that their AI systems are efficient and that they produce the right outcomes, which means that the underlying data has to be resilient, right? So systems like iManage or your M365, where you've got a lot of data, the AI systems, the AI engines will leverage this data to sort of produce all the outcomes, right? It could be drafting, researching, whatever it is. But if that's not resilient, if that's not accurate, your outputs are not going to be accurate, right? So while we see a very, very prominent move in the AI space for the legal industry, the underlying concern or the risk that they know of, it also exists. Right? They're very careful about, that part of it. And AI agents also, now that we're getting to agentic workflows, um, the fear of, and we've seen this a lot of examples, maybe not so much in the legal side of things, but we've seen a lot of examples where we've seen production databases getting deleted, production data being documents being deleted, things being moved around, all of that, right? So this definitely puts it in one of the top three in terms of threats that organizations, and specifically in the legal side of things, have to think about, right? But apart from that, as you mentioned, Andy, things like ransomware or cyber attacks, insider threats, a lot of automation errors. There's so many different workflows that law firms and organizations in general always have running in the background, right? So some of these things which have been threats are threats today as well. It does not limit these threats are not limited to just the on-prem side of things. It does extend to the cloud. It does extend to these as a service solutions that we're using, because it does happen. a lot of scripts that are running, a lot of third-party risks that still exist today. And finally, I know this was more relevant on the on-prem side of things, where you would have every now and then some issue on some technical failure, some sort of a disaster, something, going down, your servers going down, data being deleted, is not as prominent as, when you come to the cloud and SaaS, because that's literally, one of the key reasons why you want to leverage cloud and SaaS, right? But it does happen. Outages do happen. We've seen so many examples just in the last year, and the beginning of this year as well, where, like CrowdStrike, or so many different examples where outages have happened and have had significant impact of that.
No, absolutely. And especially as data is distributed across so many other platforms, Ashish, versus one platform, you don't have one point of failure, but you have multiple points where there's potential disruption that you need to be very careful with. And of course, it's just the matter of also being able to protect and recover the data no matter where it is in your control, regardless, and hopefully never a real threat that happens to your organization. We have to be prepared. But it's also, the economics, specifically in a law firm, are very, very straightforward, Ashish, when it comes to matter disruption, right? Kind of walk me through what that actually means, right? Because at the end of the day, there's kind of those two engines, right? You have active matters and you have attorneys addressing those active matters. Based on some of the research that you've done, what could the cost of matter disruption be, even in a very just in a 1 day incident?
Yeah, so I think largely, if you were to categorize, yeah, billable attorneys, like, billable hours essentially, and the active matters would largely be, the revenue streams, primary revenue streams for any law firm, right? So if that were to be affected, if attorneys were not to be able to bill for the time they put, and, the matters were not sort of active, or you're not able to actively work on these matters, it essentially means that you're not able to do your job. You're not able to bring in that revenue, right? And in some of our research, as we've seen, on an average, in an AmLaw attorney would bill 1.14 K dollars per hour, right? Of course, I've seen these numbers go way beyond that as well, but on an average, it's around the 1,000 range. And if they were to have an outage for even a 4 hour, or even like for an entire day, across 100 attorneys, which is, I believe, like a mid-sized law firm, that would directly impact them with a $500,000 for a 4 hour outage, right? Because for those 4 hours, they're not able to work. They're not able to actually produce that, to, sort of monetize those billable hours, or the hours that they're putting in. And that's just the direct financial impact. But there's so much more. And one of the top things that I always hear from law firms, and I know for a fact, is that the reputation is one of the most important things for them, right? Across the globe, because that's really something they've worked hard for 25, 30 years to build that reputation. And on that reputation, they have large customers, a large client base, important clients, right? So that reputation being at risk is, I think, one of the largest or the biggest intangible, impacts that they can have, right? And of course, then apart from that, missed deadlines, SLA breaches, legal exposure. We've seen so many cases of, law firms being sued or fined for, either kind of some kind of data loss or inaccessibility of that data, right? And finally, customer churn as well, which of course, all of this put together is, some of it is intangible, but all of it put together is massive impact for any law firm, even with like a 4 hour outage, right? So imagine a couple of days, that's going to be very, very big.
No, that's very interesting. And although obviously concerning on the numbers side, it is also makes it a very direct explanation of why organizations need budget for security, for data protection, for availability. And so this gives these law firms a very, very good opportunity to very clearly showcase risk. Whereas many other organizations are dealing with so many other variables that make it very difficult to understand, well, what does an hour of disruption really cost my organization? It's very, very straightforward here. So at the end of the day, Ashish, right, the core problem and these conversations that we're having with these law firm CIOs and legal department heads, it's how do I keep my organization, how do I keep my data resilient, right? And it's very, very important to understand that the SaaS vendors will do an incredible job of making sure that the platform is highly available, They will do an incredible job of making sure that the platform is secure. You have offloaded those responsibilities to them, and they have an entirely much larger teams devoted to that practice. But the vendor, it would be impossible for them to be able to go and restore very granular details inside of an instance for every single organization. It is simply not architected this way, right? So what they do is they say, look, we're going to protect the landing zone. We're going to protect the infrastructure associated to this, but if you delete a file, only you know if you meant to delete that file or not. Therefore, you need to be responsible for the recovery of this data, right? They cannot help it if somebody accidentally deletes something in your organization. So the most important thing about addressing this resilience problem is just being aware of that shared responsibility model, not just in Microsoft or in AWS, but across every single critical SaaS application that your organization trusts. But when you now, look to address the problem, no vendor outside of HYCU is protecting the matter lifecycle. And what do I mean by that? The majority of vendors have come from the world of virtual machine backup and file share backup. And they have addressed some SaaS applications like Microsoft 365, maybe Salesforce, you name it. But they're focused on protecting the infrastructure, not the matter. And when we say the matter, it includes critical applications like iManage Cloud. And so that is a very, very, very critical gap in the market that we're looking to fill, which is, can you protect not only my infrastructure, but also everywhere else where my digital matter lives? And that's the most important part of being able to protect the matter lifecycle versus being able to simply say, hey, infrastructure is covered. I don't know about these point SaaS applications that I depend on within my law firm. So we've taken a long time to think about this problem. We have spent a lot of time really getting to know law firms, really getting to know organizations like iManage Cloud and really understand how organizations use them, what kind of data lives there. And not only are we the only vendor that has collaborated and worked deeply and are integrated with iManage Cloud to offer a backup and recovery offering for it, but we've spent a lot of time trying to think, how do we make resilience, straightforward, simple, but enterprise class for a law firm. And that's where we introduced the concept of Legal 360, which is not, hey, here's an application that you have to protect, please call HYCU. It's here's an entire life cycle of all the applications that you do need to protect. But Ashish, as I animate this, and we talk through what our cloud is able to protect in Legal 360. Walk me through the spirit of this solution. What does this actually mean? What does it do? What does it cover? And how does it help organizations?
Yeah. So I think what we're trying to address here is the code problem, which we saw on the previous slide, right? Where we're trying to get um, the protection across the entire matter lifecycle, which, as you rightly said, is not the case today, right? Of course, there are point solutions that cater to different solutions that you see on the screen and law firms typically use. But what we're trying to address and what we're trying to sort of solve for here is one single solution that protects the entire matter lifecycle, right? So as you can see, starting from document management, something like an iManage, to identity, and that data is super critical because without identity data, you cannot access any of this, right? So it's really important that you keep that intact, that you keep that resilient as well. Then comes collaboration. As I said, collaboration has all of your emails, a lot of different tools that you use to actually work on this data. Infrastructure, and as we discussed, is still very prominent today for law firms, right? They do run a lot of things on their infrastructure, whether it's on-prem or on the cloud. And finally, so many different SaaS solutions like DocuSign, Asana, Box, and so many different things that law firms use today. What we're trying to do here, Andy, is get that coverage, offer this as a single solution for law firms for them to protect everything end to end, as opposed to them sort of, working with different point solutions, managing them differently, separately, and it's definitely it's a pain, right? So that's basically what we're trying to do here with Legal 360, and in all of our conversations with law firms, I think this has resonated really well because they're always looking to have one single solution that caters to all of their that protection of that data.
No, that makes an incredible sense, Ashish, especially when you think about up until today, many organizations have to stack backup vendors, right? You have a backup vendor that is taking care of your legacy infrastructure on premises. You might have cloud native backup vendors. You might have even the native solutions that the hyperscalers offer you. And then you might have some point solutions for other SaaS applications, right? And that becomes very expensive. You have different vendors, different workflows, completely different points of renewal, completely different points of understanding. Well, how do I even perform a recovery here versus here, right? So you have a series of tools that allow you to potentially protect some of these things, but you don't have one partner that says here is everything that you can do for your matter and protect it,
Yeah.
right? And
And I would just, sorry, just quickly also add that, the security assessment part of it. And we know it's very important for law firms, right? So when they're working with the vendor, we know they are very serious about it. They ensure that from a security perspective, everything is sort of covered. Imagine doing that 10 times to 10 different vendors, right? So that I think is also a very big point from an operational perspective.
no, absolutely. And when we think about the outcomes of this, right? Because look, we can be very transparent. People are not having the time of their lives purchasing a backup solution, Ashish, right? That's not what they're doing. There's so many other things that they have to enable within the business, right? And when they think data protection, they think I need to keep the lights on. But when you think about protecting the entire matter, your entire legal matter across distributed systems, like the outcomes that are very critical here that Haiku is uniquely positioned to help you with is one, can you access your data during a service outage of any of these applications? Do you actually have tangible, readable access to this data? Are you able to comply across the board, whether you are a multinational and you have, for example, NIS 2 requirements, or you have HIPAA requirements that you have to follow? Can you comply with data retention? Can you prove recoverability in your audits? As you adopt more AI workflows, are you confident that you can recover the data if it's altered, changed, or managed? If there's a cyber incident, whether it's internal or whether it's an external threat, can you recover that data regardless of the application that's compromised? And then can you also do this by depending on one partner and reducing the sprawl, the spend, and the inefficiencies of having to build almost a Rube Goldberg machine of different backup vendors that you have to leverage for it, right? And so, but one thing to mention too, though, is it's very fair to say, well, I already have data protection vendors that I trust. You know, Ashish, if I'm somebody who already has somebody that I deeply trust for virtual machine backup and I have had no issues with that organization, why would, as a law firm, would I have to look at a new data protection vendor? And why is Haiku pretty uniquely positioned to help a law firm?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of different points here, but if I had to sort of sum it in just about a couple of points, one, and as you I think rightly also said in between, was we have a very deep integration with iManage. We work and we are officially partnered with them to develop the solution that is the only solution right now to for backup and recovery of iManage Cloud. So that really sort of uniquely positions us when it comes to critical data protection in the legal sector, because we know iManage is a very big player in the legal side of things, and we are the only vendor that can actually protect that data today. Apart from that, I think the sheer coverage itself that we have and which we showed today is which extends to hundreds of different workloads. It's not just the sort of 10, 15 things that we saw today, but we have a very, very large coverage, and we are the number one data protection solution for SaaS. And that plays a real big role. It boils down to the same point where everything is sort of consolidated and unified within one single solution, right? And of course, we've worked with a lot of large organizations, a lot of federal customers, a lot of large law firms across the globe, and we have been able to scale with them, right? However big, however large the environments are, we have been able to work with them because we've been doing this for a very long time. We know what it is, what it means to scale with an organization, and we've been able to do that with our platform. So yeah, again, it does cut across not just SaaS that we're discussing today and primarily focusing on, but we protect across on-prem, cloud, and SaaS. So literally, it's an end-to-end solution for any kind of data protection that law firms would require.
No, this is very helpful, actually, to understand. Now, the big question that people are going to have is my data protection budget is not elastic. And I've had an established budget for my infrastructure, but I have all of these new distributed systems that I have to go and protect that are as a service. And what would concern a lot of law firms is, well, what does that do to my budget? How much more are we talking about if I have to go and now not only continue protecting this infrastructure, but also all of these new applications? So walk me through the economics of how Haiku makes organizations fill these gaps, but still make sure that they can address this in a way that makes sense to the organization.
Yeah, so the objective here, the primary thing that we want to bring forth with this offering, Andy, is the sheer coverage, right? What we want to essentially solve for is the end-to-end matter resilience, which means you're going to have to protect the data across multiple systems, right? So, and as we were saying, we work very closely with iManage. iManage is one of, again, we're very uniquely positioned there because we're the only vendor to do that. So what we essentially do with Legal 360 is while we protect iManage as the base workload, what we do offer as part of this offering or the solution is to sort of open doors to 100 plus different workloads across our coverage, which could include identity, collaboration, which is the M365 suite, the cloud side of things, and the file shares and the on-prem side of things, and all the different SaaS applications that we cover. So literally, Legal 360 is this one offering which opens doors to all the workloads that we support today while you're managing while you're backing up your iManage today, right? So that sort of is what we're trying to do. And it's a mix, I mean, we've seen law firms use many different sort of SaaS applications. Some of them are very Azure dependent, some of them are more AWS heavy, right? So we didn't want to restrict this and shape it in a way that it's very sort of narrow. What we've done with Legal 360 is open that up and let law firms and the organizations protect the way they want, right? And that's essentially what we're doing here with Legal 360.
That was very compelling, Ashish. And I think, regardless of the decisions you make within your law firm, I think the most important thing is transitioning your data protection strategy from an infrastructure focused strategy to a digital matter focused strategy because of where that data lives, because of the new ways to modify data, the new types of cyber threats, right? Ransomware has been around now for 15, 20 years. There's so many different types of threats now, right? Whether insider or external, especially in the nature of a SaaS application, right? Where the top malware that people are going after, there's very different ways of compromising these applications. Most important part is, are you confident that you can access and you recover all of this data? And can you do it even within a service outage as well? So that's the most important piece. And also that the economics do work out similar to your current budget if you're able to protect everything across your infrastructure with Haiku. So very well explained, Ashish. I mean, even I learned about this a lot.
Mhm.
We really appreciate your time today. We wanted to have a very quick 30-minute session to kind of introduce Legal 360. You have a data sheet that you're able to download with if you scan the QR code. You can also book a demo, and I'm going to put a very short poll here. Let's launch that poll. We want to make sure that we're here to help you understand. Do you want to see this in action? Do you want to see HYCU R-Cloud in action and actually see the ability to protect and recover everything with Haiku within one place? So we're going to leave this poll up. If you press yes, then we will make sure to reach out to you and schedule a demo so that you can see the solution work in real life as well. I'm going to look through any questions here. I do not see any questions. But either way, you can access the materials. We are here to answer any questions. But Ashish, thank you so much for driving today's session. Thank you all for taking time out of your day. I know you're very busy. So thank you so much. You will receive a copy of this session and you will receive the deck as well. So thank you and have a tremendous day, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.